Critics argue that Donald Trump has shown a level of behavior they consider deeply unpatriotic, saying it contradicts the image of patriotism often presented in political messaging. Some commentators are frustrated with what they see as symbolic displays, like flag imagery or references to the Constitution, being used as proof of patriotism by certain politicians, while they believe the policies and actions behind them tell a different story. According to these critics, some conservative leaders appear indifferent when ordinary Americans are harmed or affected by political decisions. They say this attitude was especially noticeable during a solemn, dignified transfer ceremony honoring members of the U.S. Armed Forces who lost their lives in connection with the conflict involving Iran. Observers online reacted strongly to what they described as inappropriate behavior from Trump during the ceremony. Many say the moment highlighted a lack of empathy towards service members who sacrificed their lives. The clip circulating online, critics argue, captures the tone that has caused such widespread backlash, and it's the moment that sparked much of the outrage now spreading across the internet.
We pray for the full recovery of the wounded and send our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible.
The criticism continues with the argument that Donald Trump seems comfortable sending other people's children into dangerous conflicts, while those closest to powerful leaders are rarely the ones asked to serve. Commentators point out that if political figures are so enthusiastic about military action, they should also be willing to see their own families take on the same risks. Some critics specifically mention Trump's son, Barron Trump, or the family members of officials like Marco Rubio, arguing that if leaders strongly support war, they should be equally open to their own relatives serving in the armed forces. The broader point being made is that many of the people who ultimately fight in wars often come from working class or economically disadvantaged backgrounds. According to these critics, when journalists highlight that imbalance, the response from the administration tends to dismiss or deflect the concern. That reaction, they say, adds to the frustration surrounding the situation. Even before addressing the behavior from Trump that sparked the latest wave of outrage.
You just mentioned that the president is going to attend the dignified transfer for these families. Given what Secretary Hegseth said this morning, is it the position of this administration that the press should not prominently cover the deaths of U.S. service members?
No, it's the position of this administration that the press in this room and the press across the country should accurately report on the success of Operation Epic Fury and the damage it is doing to the rogue Iranian regime that has threatened the lives of every single American in this room. If the Iranian regime had their choice, they would kill every single person in this room. And so we can all be very grateful that we have an administration and that we have men and women in our armed forces who are willing to sacrifice their own lives for the rest of us in this room and for every American across the country and for every troop that is based in the Middle East. That's what these...
Secretary Hegseth was complaining that it was front page news about these 6 service members who were killed.
That's not what the Secretary said, Caitlin, and that's not what the Secretary meant, and you know it. You know you are being disingenuous. There is not... We've never had a Secretary of Defense who cares more.
Get through or tragic things happen. It's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad. Yeah, as you know, we cover the deaths of U.S. service members under every president.
The press does only want to make the president look bad. That's a fact. Especially you. No, listen to me. Especially you and especially CNN. And the Secretary of Defense cares deeply about our war fighters and our men and women in uniform. He travels all across this country to meet with them, to connect with them, and your network has hardly ever probably reported on that. You also had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Chairman Kane, who's a brave patriot, standing alongside the secretary at the Pentagon this morning, again expressing his condolences to these families. And I just told you that the President of the United States will be attending their dignified transfer. So please,
that's not making the president look bad. That's showcasing that.
We expect you to cover that as you should. We expect you to cover that as you should, Caitlin. But you and your network know that you take every single thing this administration says and tries to use it to make the president look bad. That is an objectable fact.
I don't think covering troop deaths is trying to make.
If you're trying to argue right now that CNN's overwhelming coverage is not negative of President Donald Trump, I think the American people would tend to agree, and your ratings would tend to disagree with that as well. Go ahead.
Some critics argue that the administration appears more concerned about negative media coverage than about the loss of American service members. In their view, figures like Caroline Leavitt seemed more focused on defending Donald Trump from criticism than addressing the fact that 6 members of the U.S. Armed Forces had lost their lives. According to these critics, the response gave the impression that the priority was managing public relations rather than acknowledging the human cost of the conflict. They also claim that Trump himself appeared disengaged during the moment, suggesting that his presence was less about honoring the fallen and more about promoting his own brand or political image. Journalist Aaron Rupar wrote, "It could not be more obvious that the president does not care about U.S. service members and in fact regards their deaths as mere political inconveniences. He has more sympathy for Putin than Americans who died because he decided to wage illegal war. Just listen to him. Here is Donald Trump in a baseball cap. His baseball cap that he sells on his website. It's made in China, by the way. He also sells it at the White House, which is disgusting." This Twitter user wrote, "Remember when there was a week-long scandal because Joe Biden looked at his watch at a D-Day ceremony?" Chris Jackson wrote on Twitter, "Trump just wore a campaign hat. Yes, a campaign hat that he wants you to go and buy to a dignified transfer for fallen U.S. soldiers that were killed during his Iranian blunder." These are the same people who spent weeks attacking Biden for briefly glancing at his watch. This hypocrisy is disgusting. There is no bottom for these people. Another Twitter user responded to this post by saying, "How pathetic." Keith Edwards chimed in saying he's wearing a baseball cap while soldiers' dead bodies are being transferred. What a disgrace. Critics say the controversy surrounding Donald Trump reflects what they view as a broader pattern of behavior that they believe disrespects both the office of the presidency and the sacrifices of military personnel. Despite the backlash, many of Trump's allies, including figures like Lindsey Graham, continue to strongly defend him, often arguing that his policies are necessary to support allies such as Israel. Critics, however, say that political leaders sometimes emphasize foreign policy commitments while Americans at home still struggle with economic challenges like low wages and rising costs of living. Opponents also argue that Trump has spent much of his political career trying to blur the traditional boundaries between the presidency and the military, suggesting that loyalty should be directed toward him personally rather than to the Constitution or democratic institutions. They point to moments such as his visit to Fort Bragg, where he appeared with supportive troops during political remarks criticizing leaders like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. According to critics, these actions are part of a broader effort to reshape public perception of government power and influence institutions through loyal political allies and wealthy supporters. Supporters of Trump reject that characterization, saying his administration is simply aimed to push back against what they saw as political bias within government agencies. Debates around these issues have also been amplified by commentators such as Mehdi Hasan and Chris Hayes, who have discussed the political and constitutional implications of these controversies.
Has kind of bragged about, at an operational level, that we're not gonna care about this kind of thing.
Not at all. I mean, he's gone out of his way to say that no more stupid rules of engagement, he called it. No more politically correct wars. That is their attitude towards the killing of people in Iran. He's just done an interview with 60 Minutes, Chris. I just saw the clip before I came on, where he said the only people who are worried are Iranians who are going to be killed. Like talking generally about all Iranians. This is the problem now. On the very first day of this war, they killed 160 kids. And it hasn't stopped, Chris. It's not just this attack. They attacked an elementary school today in Tehran. They've attacked a dozen hospitals, according to the World Health Organization. When I say they, the United States and Israel. This is a joint war from two countries that don't have great records when it comes to bombing civilian targets. According to UNICEF, 1,200 civilians killed in Iran in 6 days, 200 children. A part of the reason for this war, Chris, was supposed to be protecting the Iranian people against the regime. How's that working out so far? It's disgusting what happened on day one. And there's also talk, Chris, of them using AI to rush the number of targets out, of using Claude and Maven from Palantir and Anthropic to generate 1,000 targets a day. Of course they're going to hit schools and hospitals if that's how they're doing this targeting. And I would also point out that right now they've reduced, Chris, they've just basically gutted the office at the Pentagon where people used to try and mitigate civilian harm. They've basically firing all the people who work in the civilian mitigation harm unit at the Pentagon. 160 people. These are people, Hegseth, Trump and co, who don't care about civilian casualties.
Yeah, that point about the reverberations of this, obviously on the first order of just the human loss of life. But, Iran has just come through a period in which there were, according to independent human rights groups, as many as possibly 30,000 Iranians killed by their own government amidst protests. It could have been much smaller than that. It might have gone up to that number. I think it's, we don't have polling inside Iran, obviously, but there is a significant amount of people, perhaps a majority, maybe even a large majority, that genuinely do hate this government. It's incredibly unpopular. Certainly, it's also got people that hate it across the region for all sorts of other reasons that they have experienced, whether in Lebanon or Syria and others. And so just from the sort of geopolitical strategic point, like on day one, to have this and to have the rhetoric being into the region, we don't care if you live or die, to not make the distinction between like civilians and combatants, just also strikes me as like wildly self-defeating at just the sort of tactical level.
Yes. It's a moral abomination, and yes, it's tactically stupid. They bombed a submarine and just let the sailors drown to death. Going again, even the Nazis didn't do that during World War II, apparently. Even the Nazis collected people from the water. This is insane rhetoric, insane behavior from people who don't give a damn. Donald Trump has never given a damn about Iranian lives. I see people in the diaspora cheering on this war, and I feel bad for them because Donald Trump screws over everyone, and he's going to screw over the Iranian people as well.
Critics argue that the issue isn't really about terms like woke or other political slogans often used in public debates. Instead, they claim the deeper concern is the possibility of Donald Trump gaining excessive influence over the military and the public gradually becoming desensitized to that level of control. They believe this dynamic could allow political leaders to pursue controversial military actions while framing criticism as partisan attacks. Some commentators also link these concerns to Trump's close relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, arguing that political alliances and financial backing from influential supporters play a role in shaping foreign policy decisions. For critics, these issues are important to keep discussing and questioning in public conversations. If you want to continue supporting discussions like this, you can subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, and if you made it all the way to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.